Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be going over the history of the synchro summoning mechanic of the game. And it's really interesting to see where we are now with this cool tune list. This is from the most recent South America WCQ. Daniel wants to go over the history of how we got to this point, the history of the game, pretty much. We have about 9 deck lists, 10 including this one, actually. So, um, sit back, pause the video if you need to, go get your snacks, and enjoy the content we have for you. We're gonna try to make this as informative as possible and really try to go over how Synchro became so busted in this current iteration of the game and like the history of the summoning mechanic itself. And yeah, Daniel, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. So I know you have like a cool tune list right here, right? Um, and obviously like you need tuners for this mechanic to work. But the thing is that like this mechanic is so advanced in this point in time, like we kind of have to consider like how did synchro summoning go about because this is like everyone's favorite mechanic at the moment, right? Let's go for the first deck list. Um, and the one deck list that we're gonna look at, which is like I think the origin of synchro summoning is Teledad, and this is probably like every old person's like favorite format of all time. Um, so what we have here is Jerry Wing's deck, that one SJC, and you're gonna notice that like this is somewhat not the traditional Teledad list. And to note which set we're in Crossroads of Chaos, which is the Black Girl set. I didn't really think Duelist Genesis was like a really good set to start with, just because even though like it introduced synchro summoning, it didn't like there were too many like not conjointed like solved lists, if that makes any sense. So in this format in particular, that card pool wise, I just want to note that there's 3 emergency teleport and 3 reinforcements of the army. So a lot of people played those cards at 3. There's only like 1 teleport and 2 Rhoda in this deck. Because Gary Wayne decided to take a different approach, in which it was more of like a mid-range control deck. And a lot of the desynchro decks at this point in time were like super hyper consistent. So like they would just spam the board, make a board, have traps, right? But um, the biggest thing is that Jerry Wing decided to play a slower game. So that's where there's like 2 Diamond Dudes. There's like a Mystic Tomato, and then like Royal Oppressions, right? And the biggest reason for this is because like you didn't need to, play this hyper aggressive game. You can just slow roll the game. Like the nice thing about Krebons, as like this is like the most premium tuner at this point in time, was you could block attacks. And that's like unheard of because like if you really think about it, like you needed trap cards originally like Sakuretsu Armor, Dimensional Prison, stuff like that to like live. But this one Krebons you can like use life as a resource to play the game. So having this optimistic tomato or like Sangan is like super valuable, and then you can make your plays afterward when you're set up. So like when you can draw like malicious and put it into the graveyard with be a D draw, Grapher, Phoenix Wing Blast, and stuff like that, like you can make big plays after. Um, and then looking at the extra deck, right? Because I think that's the most important thing here. We didn't have a lot to work with because it's like the first 2 sets, right? So there's like 3 Star Strike and 3 Thought Ruler in the case you need it for whatever reason. It's just there to fill up space, really. I think the most important card because it was probably like too overpowered was Goyo Guardian. Um, why did they make this card? Like Taj, like look at this card's stats. Like this card's crazy. Like a level 6 Earth, like well, this used to be just a tuner, not an Earth tuner, right? But it was just 28 attack guy steal it. Like
Yeah,
this
no,
just kills
Goyo
Stardust
was a
Dragon.
problem.
Like go
Unfortunately,
in.
I have had the pleasure of playing Edison format too, so like Goyo Guardian is definitely a PTSD monster for me.
Yeah, like this card is ridiculous. Like for its time, right? Like everyone could just make it for free. Like stealing Stardust Dragon is great. Um, Another big thing I want to talk about too is Crush Guard Virus because this card is like really really expensive. For those who didn't know about this card was originally a prize card, but when Gold Series 1 came out, um, this was like a $300 like gold rare, if I remember, if not more. So you can only imagine like this was for sure to pay to win. And this deck costed about like I think 2 grand, if I remember. So like this deck is like literally like a tier 0 pay to win is insane. Um, And then I think something to note. The triangle in these formats was Teledad, Gladiator Beast, and Lightsworn. So when you look at the side deck, a lot of the side deck choices were for Lightsworn and Gladiator Beast. So like obviously like Jujutsu Masters for GB. Um, like I guess like the Monarchs was just in this main deck were just like tech choices that Jerry Wayne decided to play because he liked them. There's one random Thunder King. The light mirrors are for the Lightsworn deck, and then he had like random one ups. Like he decided Mirror Force and Torrential, which is like usually staples in this format. But he decided to side them, which is very odd. Lightning Mirror is the same thing. Like that's really random for a one of, but like in this format, it's like quite crucial, right? Um, but like obviously, right? Like as we continue like Synchro Summoning, right? A ban list happens in 2009, which is like a huge reset in the format. But a new card comes into the format that changes Yu-Gi-Oh completely, which is Dark Strike Fighter, which we'll get to right now. This is the next deck list. So when you look at and this is obviously like the later half of 2009, but I want to preface that like let's look at Dark Strike Fighter because that's like the most important card of this format. Um, so what basic ignoring main phase one, right? You should be the monster. Inflict damage to your opponent equal to the numbers level times 200, right? So if you were to actually do some math here, um, so this card stats base is 26 and this level 7, right? And then if you tribute Destruction Credit specifically, that's 1400 damage, right? So 26 plus 14 is 4,000 life, right? So that's half your opponent's life points already, right? So imagine the deck just triples up too. So you can do an OTK on a clear field with 8,000 damage, right? Um, and this would card, if summonable, was in everyone's deck, literally everyone's deck. So therefore, it makes it really like the games were like 5 minutes, matches were like 5-10 minutes, easy, right? So
So
you might
I'm
ask,
I'm gonna I'm gonna push back a little bit here. So was like that was Dark Strike Fighter like the first real sign that synchros were becoming like more of a combo kill mechanic instead of like just value and tempo? Because like I look at things like Stardust and I look at things like Black Rose, and I feel like those are more like tempo and control cards, and then like the only real threat was like Goyo, right? Was Dark
right?
Strike Fighter like the first sign of like that mechanic was changing and evolving outside of just being a tempo thing?
Yeah, so like a big thing was like everyone like was using playing like for utility, right? Like even Arcanite Magician when this got released was like it was a utility card because it was pop 2. But Dark Strike Fighter was the first clear sign of like everyone's just OTKing again. Like because it was really reminiscent of like Dad Return, which is like the year before, like the format before Teledad. So this was like kind of reminiscent of that. So being able to summon out tuners, right, for free was like the biggest deal to make Dark Strike Fighter like a really lethal card. Um, so obviously in these formats, like it was like Blackwing was really reminiscent, GB was still good, Lights was still good, but the release of like one card changed everything was Xaber Airbellum actually. So this card was originally exclusively in a structure deck, right? And obviously we've seen this in Edison where like X Saber is like a really strong deck, but X Saber cards weren't really like it just the first idea of it got released, and this just being a tuner, right? Just a generic card. But the biggest reason to play Airbellum it was summonable Rescue Cat because that card just summons 2 Airbellums from your deck. So in essence, right, like being able to summon like 3 monsters all the time, it increased the ceiling of Yu-Gi-Oh and its pace, right? So um when you look at this deck composition, right, like all this was trying to do was put two like 3 plus 4 equals 7, right? So cards like Summoner Monk, which pitch a bajillion spells, which are 15, right? And you pitch any of them, and you summon another monk, pitch another spell, summon Rescue Cat. Rescue Cat summons 2 Airbellums, and that's 2 Dark Strike Fighters, right? Um, another example is like Gatekeeper Spy. As I think the cards gotten worse throughout the years, it was still like a very strong like turn one set where if your opponent ran into it, it's like 2,000. It summons another spy, which means that the next turn you just summon Rescue Cat and then go crazy, right? Oh, oh, it's my phone. And then you have like tomatoes to get you monks. You got like There's Koala. A really cool card in this format that a lot of people don't know is the new Spacian Dark Panther. It basically what that card does in this deck was is copies boss monsters, right? Cards like Judgment Dragon or like Darkroom Dragon that they leave on the field, it becomes that. So it's like super valuable there. Um, and another big thing that is gonna be really crazy moving forward, is Cold Wave. And for anyone who knows how powerful that card is in Edison, this card was at 3 in this format. So there's only 2 in this deck list, right? Because Gale wanted to play traps. But essentially, like, if you could resolve this card going first, like setting Spy, is a game over because essentially, like, your opponent doesn't have back row, and they better have Gores, which is a one of in this format. So, um, this means that
So
like OTKs were
quick
prominent.
question then. So would you say like this Rescue Cat package was like the real engine that broke Synchros here, and like Dark Strike Fighter was like just the overall payoff? Like was Cat the real problem, or was Dark Strike Fighter like the first real sign of this being a problem?
Extra Fighter because it was splashable in every deck. It was
Gotcha.
just, but it was just like a cat deck in particular. It just puts up the most bodies like to do this OTK consistently. Because otherwise you would need like Darkroom Dragon or Synchros yourself to like make this payoff work. The another deck that comes up in this format that makes Dark Strike Fighter more consistently is Soledad, and that's what Adam Korn played at this point in time too. Um, but more importantly about the Synchro Cat deck, just this was the deck that turbos out the Dark Strike Fighter the best. Um, and it can play the best grind game because like Pot of Avarice, as you'll see, is like a really big card in the format, which is still at 3.
Got it. So this is
So
late 2009 then. So is this like kind of where the point where deck building shifted from asking what singles were like really good utility to asking like how many bodies you can generate as fast as possible to get the payoff of Dark Strike Fighter?
yeah, like so you like every deck can make it, right? But like at some point, but if you want like the most consistent way of doing it, um, to end games quickly, like the cat deck was very good at doing that because it was just a strong setup turn 1 deck, and then the moment turn 2 happens, like the game's over.
Gotcha. Cool.
As you can see, like the side deck right too, just to make sure it was still a lot of Gladiator Beast and Lightsworn, which is why like just Kaiku. Kaiku is really important in this deck because it's a spellcaster. So not only it shuts off Lightsworn's graveyard, but lets you make Arcanet Magician. Um,
Got it.
and
So
like
like after this
yeah,
point, so like what was the next big evolution? Was it more like about stronger synchro bosses, or like was it more about even better engines that produce bodies? What are we looking at after this 2009 format?
so funny enough, a ban list happens right at the end of Worlds, and funny enough, Dark Strike Fighter gets banned immediately.
Oh, how lovely.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about the next big synchro that changed Yu-Gi-Oh, which is Bryonic, which is the next deck
Oh,
list.
I love Brio.
Yeah,
What a card.
so again, like kind of late '09, but like more so like November, right? Because that's when Hidden Arsenal comes out. Essentially, what was really big about this format was Bryonic, Mistworm, and Catastor were all legal, like for the first time. And so the question was in this format, what were the best decks that abused the Bryonic the best? So some would argue Blackwing because you had Bayou, you had 3 Black Whirlwind, 3 Oppression, right? You could just play the slow roll control game, and then like obviously with a Bayou Oppression, like the ruling is that like you can play as many life points for Bayou whatever, so it doesn't matter. Or you could play the best combo deck that plays Bryonic, right? So funny enough, in this ban list, just to remember, OCG and TCG were still combined. So like Mizuki went to 2 for the sake of market, like to promote the zombie deck, as we'll see here. So this deck is obviously piloted by Jeff Jones, and obviously we know that guy is like a huge innovator in our game. And to look at his deck now, after years of like not being able to look at it from like multiple resources, his deck building is very like cookie cutter and like very explosive for his playstyle. So I want to talk about Deep Sea Diva because like now because we recently introduced Crebons right from Teledad. So this card came in Raging Battle, and this card just summons itself from the deck, right? So a lot of people only play 2 because like you can only you only need to resolve the combo because it was so quote unquote searchable. I would argue to play three moving if you had to look back in time, just because you just want to see the combo more often than not. But the thing is that a lot of people were playing like slower paced Yu-Gi-Oh, so they just want to slow roll until they have everything at other resources available to them. Um, so Mizuki like being not being once per turn is like the crazy part, being like it summons back Plague Spreader. Um, and Golem Zombie is also not once per turn either. So like you're just getting multiple searches to do an OTK, which is like super crazy, right? But the card I actually want to talk about, which broke the format, is Burrow from a Different Dimension. So that card says target up to 3 banished monsters return to the graveyard. So when you're doing like this OTK, right? You're like you go like have Diva, have summon Diva, have Goblins all be on field, right? You synchro for Brio, and then you would like search Mizuki. Mizuki, you pitch Mizuki to bounce a card on field. It can also be your own cards, by the way. That's like really important. Um, you bounce a card, and then you Mizuki back the Goblin Zombie. You synchro again for another 6, and then that Goblin Zombie searches like Plague. You pitch your Plague, and then you sack for Plague. You summon back to level 8, and then you can Burial again, right? Burial on that, and then put back your Mizuki and Plague. Mizuki back the Goblin Zombie or Plague Spreader, and then you could just put like a buttloads of damage. Like you can have like 4 or 5 synchros and not summon 10 synchros a game, because like this mechanic allows it to. So that's the other thing, right? Brio was like you could use it as a means to like you could pitch one card at a time and bounce one thing, and then do it multiple times a turn. So as long as you had like one Brio, like, it was like having 3 Brios essentially in the hands of the right player.
Okay, so
So
quick question then. So with Burial from a Different Dimension specifically, was the real issue Play Spreader and Mizuki being reusable, or was it Brio letting all those graveyard loops convert into immediate board and damage?
it's still Brio because the thing is that like because the card was not once per turn, like it enables all the other cards to be synergetic. So it would just accumulate to all these like or like 3 or 4 synchro monsters, and then you would convert, and then you also clear the board too. So that's like a clear way to win the game, right? So do 8,000. So note that in this format there were 3 Tragodia and Gores this format. So there's even more ways to stop OTKs or whatever. We're not at a point where like I think people cited threatening roar just for zombie, just so they don't get OTK'd. Um, and another thing I want to know about this deck building, this is very like modern Yu-Gi-Oh esque, I would say. So you can see like there's 2 Foolish Sparrow and 2 Gold Sark. I think Jeff just realized that like the amount of pace of game that he was playing, um, if you use like Gold Sark to fetch like Heavy Storm or like My Body is a Shield or Burial from Different Dimension, like combo pieces that you would want. And then by the time it's 2 turns, you can for sure OTK them. Um, Burial was like one of those like Foolish Burial in particular was one of those weird cards too. It mainly just sent Mizuki or Plague Spreader. Um, but it just allowed like a lot of different lines of play to go through. I think there's one thing in hindsight I wish I saw from Jeff Stack, but maybe he tested it and he thought that wasn't good. Was Book of Life, because that card was like super good into Lights One and Value. Um, and it was really good in this deck where like you can have like Goblin Zombie set and then like get Plague Spreader and then Book of Life your Goblin Zombie and then combo from there. Um, but Foolish Spirit was like a way to make that happen. But he decided to play more of like a combo deck where like all combo pieces and just go all in. And this is why, which is where like one of my favorite cards in the format, My Body is a Shield, comes in because it ensured like cards like Mirror Force Torrential, Bottomless, like we're not resolving. So again, the side deck, right? It goes here. So this is the first time we're seeing a side deck. What is it? Extra deck monster in the side deck. This is like not unheard of, but like
Yeah, this is a
it's
little
something.
strange.
Yeah, it's a little strange at first, but like a lot of like people like who were really old back then started doing this because they didn't have room in their extra deck, as you'll see like the extra deck's room. Also, another thing is on there's a dark end in that side in the extra deck, right? I just to clarify for everybody, Jeff did win Anaheim that year, so he had access to this.
Oh, nice. So
That
he won the prize card and then immediately put it in his next deck.
Yeah, so like he had a lot of people who didn't have. This was another pay to win card. It was like it wasn't really needed, but like when you had it, it was like super powerful. Um, so to see this in his deck list, I was like, oh, so like he was one of those people. Yeah. Um, and as you'll see, like Kaiku's really big because like everyone was playing like zombie, so like you would just then not let them have like their Mizuki banishes, which is super huge. Mirror of Oaths is also kind of cool for the GB matchup. Fairy Wind is for like the anti-meta decks, as you'll see, like decks with lower oppression, like um or like Dimensional Fissure. It was like super big there. Um, I do want to talk about like one other thing, which is like the zombie synchros in particular. So Doom Kaiser Dragon is like the big one. Uh, Doom Kaiser. There, yeah. So that card says summon back a zombie from your opponent's graveyard, and then and destroy when it leaves the field. So everyone was playing Plague Spreader at this point in time, right? You see this vision happening, right?
Wow, this is just beautiful in the mirror match then.
No, it's just for any deck that plays Plague Spreader. So like the lights say the Lights Run deck, right? So the Lights Run deck with no plague, and then like they're like, oh, the zombie guy would be like, hey, I'm gonna steal your Plague Spreader and make a level 8,
But you
right?
basically would get punished for playing like Plague Spitter then.
Exactly. So like another thing that comes up a lot in this deck that you'll see is that like that card's not once per turn, right? So you can only imagine if you have Doom Kaiser in rotation, you can go like Mizuki summon Doom Kaiser back, summon back their plague, make another level 8.
That's kind of gross.
That is no, it was disgusting. Like it is just like this if you got to summon this card in the mirror, it was also just really crazy. You can summon back their Zombie Master, and stuff like that. So like or like their Spirit Reaper, so you could deny hand advantage or whatever. So it was just like the things you could do with this deck, it was like super next level, I think.
So it kind of feels like one of the first real clear examples of like the graveyard turning into like a shared resource instead of just your own setup.
Yeah, so like it now it matters if like you must everyone was checking graveyards every turn just so that like what resources do they have that they can use.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
yeah,
I'm so
so
scared to see what 2010
so
has for us.
so that's the thing, right? The thing is this is the format right before Edison
Oh,
that we're looking at.
cool. So this is really like right before peak Yu-Gi-Oh then.
This is like yeah, this is before. So I just want to mention before we moving forward, right? From like '08 and up until this point, Yu-Gi-Oh has been like an OTK fest. Like who can OTK someone better by deck building, right? So this is really fast-paced Yu-Gi-Oh at its finest. So let's just go to Edison now.
Boy, here we
Because
go.
yeah,
Oh,
because
I
that's
love
the
this list.
performance of yeah. So this is actually Jeff's list that he won with, right? Funny enough, so that last the last Diva Zombie deck profile we just looked at, it was also Jeff's deck. So you can only imagine like what a deck builder he's been like the last like I don't know decade now, right? If not more.
It's so like drastically different too.
So yeah, so from what I remember, I think he had to pay rent for this event. So like he had to win an SGC just to pay rent. So like the guy's that boy's beast. Um, but essentially like this is so what is it? Absolute Power Force was the set, right? So this introduced like a bunch of new cards like Hamster, um, which like changed the way you set Yu-Gi-Oh, right? So I also want to mention that like this was like the first big control format in a really really long time. So when Dandelion went to this list, everyone was trying to figure out what decks can play Dandelion, right? Because like tuners like or tokens equal like materials for tuners, right? And synchros. So what was the best deck to do it? It was ironic that like I guess Lone Fire exists, so summon it up from deck. You could pitch it for quick draw, and you can summon it back off the Breed Dragon. So those monsters all had synergy with Dandelion, right? Raiko was also gets to Millet, so like even Card Trooper. So this was just like a good stuff dandy deck, right? In essence. So another thing that came up was like, okay, so you put Brio to 1, right? So what synchros do you actually have, right? So obviously the dex tuners in this case was Quick Draw Synchron and Debris Dragon, right? So Debris Dragon only can summon dragons and specific dragons, right? And then Quick Draw can only summon anything with Synchron in it. So you kind of had to work with this card pool slightly to like give yourself an edge. But the big card that came out in this set that was like broke the game was Dual Warrior, right? And we if people who know Edison, this card like is insane. Like this card pitches down the line, and then you add back any card that comes back, right? And it can attack directly. Like so you could play this like really like mini game of like, I poke you for 12 and then dodge and then put up tokens so I don't die. And you can do that every turn. So once you have the loop, it's like it's really hard not to die. And then you have all these, and then the nice thing about the Dual Warrior in particular, your graveyard became a second hand, right? Because that card's as any card. So cards like Caius, like Darkness Dragon, become like boss monsters that you can add back and start snowballing the game. Um, the other thing I would say also is that like because the games were getting really long, right, and you did have a lot of tuners at hand, Pot of Avarice became like a really big staple in the deck. And Jeff, I think, was the only person at this point in time for this event played three. I think everyone moving forward like decided to copy this trend because drawing two cards is really good.
Okay, so two
Um,
questions here then. With Dandelion and tokens entering the picture now, like, is this the moment where Synchro kind of shifts from very pure extension into more a recursive value engine? And then secondly, would you say like Drill Warrior is like the defining Edison Synchro because it rewards the grind, the recursion, and the resource loops instead of just ending the game on the spot that we kind of experienced in the past two formats?
well, I would think that like if for this deck in particular, like Drill Warrior is like I think the MVP because it changes the dimensions and how you play the deck. Like Yu-Gi-Oh has always been like your hand, right, for the most part, but at least in the first like '08 and '09 Yu-Gi-Oh have been, it's more graveyard based, right? So having your graveyard be a second hand is like super strong, right? Because it's another resource you can have, but Jewel Warrior being like having access to your graveyard being your second hand is like what breaks this whole like synchro mechanic in particular. Just having access to this one synchro just changes the way you would want to play Yu-Gi-Oh essentially. I think another thing was like synchros became more of a utility piece now that like instead of like OTKing your opponent left and right, it now just lets you solve boards. So cards like Junk Archer, which got released, became like a way to banish a dude to attack for game if it's like super simplified. Nitro Warrior was a way to attack over monsters. Um, Turbo Warrior, I guess, like friends targeting. Um, like it was just like another like a Black Rose became like the board wipe again. It's at one. And it's just one of those like things where like people got to enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh because it was slower paced. Because everyone was like getting upset like you drew like last format, right? You would draw like I don't know, Diva, like a floater plus burial and then Dust Tornado, right? That's like a four card hand that just OTKs your opponent for free. So like uh so Edison, like knowing that there was like Frog, Vayu, Machina Gadget, I don't know, you saw GB Lightsworn, right? Like all these other decks in contention, and having new decks in the fray, right? Like it was a very like taste of fresh air for a lot of people, I guess.
So Edison feels like at the first point where synchros became a toolbox for solving game states instead of just converting bodies into lethal then.
Yeah, like it became more of like this toolbox era, which is like what a lot of people like. They like the idea of like, hey, can I make this to win the game instead of just like, hey, how do I go for game?
Okay, so like this is kind of where like the extra deck started rewarding sequencing and like matchup knowledge a lot more than just raw output, like compared to the previous two formats.
Yeah, so like another thing I will mention is like if it's people who have played Edison at this point now, right? Like the deck, I know like the format seems a lot more solved than normal, but it's still like very diverse, right? You can play whatever you want because of the power level, all the cards are the same. But it is how you build, right? Like and what extra deck composition that you play that gives you an edge in these type of formats. And I think Jeff at this point in time, like not many people knew what the quick draw cards do, or like he was able to abuse Danny the best in that room, right? And just outplayed everybody.
All right,
So
so like
which is why which is why the deck
in
is the way
that
it
sense
is.
then, so with Edison being a little bit more of like this toolbox era, which decks actually use that extra deck flexibility the best. Like, would it be like quick draw dandy, value, frogs, or is it just all at the same power level relatively?
It is all the same power level. It is your deck composition you want.
It's awesome. What happened?
So so Yeah, no, so like that's like that's why we love Edison so much. Like to be honest, this is the first when I first started Yu-Gi-Oh, Edison was the first format I got good, like the foundation wise, because I didn't understand like how to go for game with OTKs, but I understood like slow pace Yu-Gi-Oh because like I understood the idea of like, hey, there's a board, I have to break it, or like I have to keep this one dude alive to play like anti-meta or whatever to like control. So it taught me like different ways to play, and like this is why this is for a lot of people this is like the beloved format probably of all time.
Right, and like that kind of like board solving Yu-Gi-Oh is like way easier to latch onto early than just memorizing who can get to 8K damage first, right?
Yeah, and like that's why like when you look at all these deck builders before, like um they were just way ahead of their time. This is the first time this is the first format everyone had fair game.
Yeah, of course, because it like rewards understanding pressure, tempo, and like just resource trading before it asks you to learn all the explosive combo math
Yeah.
that comes with that. So I'm a bit curious, what's next?
So the next deck I'm gonna show you is what went from the best format of all time to the worst format of all time.
Oh, not my
You love
frogs.
frogs.
Not my
Okay.
frogs.
Okay, so this is the Frog FTK deck that was released during Shining Darkness format. So I want to preface this. So North America was like X Saber like region, right? But everywhere else was a frog region. And this is also the budget deck of the format. This deck was $20.
Yu-Gi-Oh! It was
Like
used to be so affordable.
yeah. Okay, so and then a lot of these were commons and rares, right? So basically what this deck achieves to do is instead of OTKing your opponent, you FTK your opponent, right? So Mass Driver is the culprit of this format. Um, what that card says is tribute a monster and you it burn X amount of damage, right? So essentially the game plan is if you can get to Substitute and Swap Frog, you dump 20 frogs in grave, and then you use Rodentonin to reborn every frog, and then you Mass Driver it. So there's 8k on the board. 8k is done, right?
That's disgusting.
That is disgusting. And obviously, look how much draw power there is in the deck. There's 3 hand destruction, 3 warrior breed, so you can like mulligan your hand. And then there's a tuner in this format that like is kind of underrated in Edison, but it gets abused in this format in particular, which is Fishboard Blaster.
Good riddance.
Yeah, like that card is disgusting. Why did they print this card? Um, but essentially, like if you look at the deck's composition, um, it's game one is meant to FTK, right? But what a lot of people did in this format, and I think is really genius, because we don't get to see this moving forward a lot of the time, is the smokescreen strategy. So look at this guy's side deck. There's lads, there's cyber dragons, quick draws, right? And then like there's DD Crow for the mirror, and then like just good card Yu-Gi-Oh, right? So essentially you take out like a good amount of this FTK strategy and you switch to like this aggro control deck with quick draw and
Interesting.
lad. So you'll notice that like you can like just so outside the because we've seen how Frog is in like Edison, right? So imagine being able to play this deck at full power with Ronin and having all these like random other strategies involved. So like you have the dupe block, you have like you can substitute and like Death Frog, you can have because you had the dupe block, right? Now you can ensure that like your quick draw goes through every turn to poke for 12. So not having to like um resource manage your dandelions and then what's the word you have like more synchros available to you now because Dark Destroyer got released in TCG with that card says pop cards.
Okay, so
So
like even with the smoke screen side deck, was the real strength here that even if people like oversighted for the FTK, you could still pivot into a completely functional control deck then?
yeah, because a lot of people would side in Master Restrict or like a bunch of DD Crows and like just up rural oppressions, right? But because you got to play like this different strategy, the side deck cards become like a lot less relevant.
Right, because like all their anti-FTK cards suddenly like line up way worse if you just become like a normal quick draw control deck after siding.
Yeah, exactly. Like you switch because you got to switch game plans. Like their side deck cards become like dead, and that's what you need in these type of matchups where like you don't have an edge because there's so much hate because you have a target under you are the target on everyone's back.
Okay, so is this like one of the very like early examples of like citing post games are like almost going into an entirely different deck then?
Yes, there's other examples that I'll show like later, and when we continue the series. But this was one of the few examples where like yeah, like people would smokescreen into a completely different strategy just so that like they have a better chance to win post side.
Okay, so like curveball question here then. So Frog FTK specifically, what do you think was more toxic? Like the raw FTK itself or the fact that the deck could punish people for deciding correctly?
I think it's the Rock DK itself because like if you win the role, you win the match, and like I can talk about Worlds too because I was actually there at that event when in the audience, and essentially like I remember Galio who won the event, he played Debris Dragon in his side deck,
Ooh, that's
so
fire.
just to make like Black Rose, but like it was one of those things where like a lot of like the call for that event was Blackwing, and it was the deck that can play made it DD Crow the best because it could play Icarus attack and it put in Darks for Dark Arn, but it was meant to check all the Frog decks. It was the best deck to do it. Because
Interesting.
it got to play like it gets to play every game for the most part because all it needs is like one guy or whatever to play, and then you could set up deck devi on top, which is really cool to beat the Frog deck, and then you had like Canna Waters, you had roll oppressions, you had like skill drains, like you had so much hate for Frog that like you should beat that deck outright. It's just people get unlucky in the final. So this deck truly had an edge.
Yeah, so like the format was warped enough that even the best anti-meta deck could just still lose to a coin flip
Yeah,
or just
yeah.
uninteractive opener then.
So note to also just clarify, right? This format had other decks involved. Like there were the Frog Monarch, which is extremely popular. You had X Saber, which is at full power. You had Infinity at full power, and the fifth deck, which is like I think the sleeper deck of the format, was Herald of Perfection. All those decks were like at the same power level as this deck, but because of how consistent and like powerful this FTK was, this was the deck moving forward for the rest of the format.
Okay, so like even with like Frog FTK being the most like infamous, at least looking back now with hindsight, would you still say that this was like a genuinely diverse format in terms of like raw power level across the top decks, or was it just like if you're not playing frogs, you're just gonna lose based off the die roll?
Like it was basically the first true sign of power creep was like all the other decks kind of got invalidated. Like if you weren't playing one of five decks, which like I said before, which is the five decks we just mentioned, then you weren't competing at a very high level, I think. So Blackwing was like or GB I think were like really strong like anti-meta picks for this event that gave you a chance to beat Frog.
Okay, so then after this, what was like the next big step? Was it like
So like
Infernity
so
taking over, or was it like another format shift you think
yeah, so
matters
like
more?
so so this next deck I think so we I think is X Saber. X Saber. It's like between X Saber and Infernity. I just had X Saber here because this is like the more consistent deck I think. So essentially the set is Duelist Revolution, right? So three big cards came out of this set which are in this deck list, which is Effect Veiler, Plotted Duality, and Solemn Warning. Um right? So these
Oh,
three cards were relatively expensive because there were three genuine good staples. But they changed the way the game is played, where the game's direction wants to be slower, right? So when you think of modern Yu-Gi-Oh, right, like there's a bunch of hand traps, right? But we didn't have as many hand traps back then, so we had to deal with trap cards, right? So cards like Warning become like super high value when you go first. But in this format, I think we found out that life points were like um, a big like detriment. So everyone only wanted to play one, because the games last longer. Duality, I think, was also a card that like not a lot of people explored yet because like even though it was a consistency card, like and if you went first, you weren't really special summoning, but you actually just wanted to special summon a lot after like the turn after. So if you drew this card mid game, the card didn't feel great, which is why I think people only played two. Um, Another big thing was the two big staples of the format came back, which is Monster Reborn and Darkhold. So these cards changed Yu-Gi-Oh for like for the better, I think, because this gave you like up deck potential, which because you lost like powerful cards, so you need to bring back powerful cards. Um, so some innovations, I think. So three Emerald's Blade was like the big money card of the format still, but like it was like a floating card, right? and I think Dark Soul got errated, because that card was not once per turn, so you can only search once during the end phase. I think with that card, so that's where X Saber became more fair. Um, but obviously, right, the whole goal was put two X Sabers on board, make Gothams hand loop them, or like make Hunley pop their back row. So that was, I think, X Saber's huge edge, which is like Full Hum Knight was like a way to, like, it's like Krebons, right? It gets you block and attack, but only one attack really. Um, and being able to, loop Voltron and get to hand loop them was like something so crazy than Yu-Gi-Oh that like there needs to be a check for that at some point, which we'll get to. But this was like the premier control deck, if not like or mid range deck that people played. That it was super good into this meta. Um,
Okay, so
but
I'm a bit curious because at this point, Expert Saber's got like a bunch of new cards, and like compared to the Edison decks, did X Saber start to like represent Synchro as becoming less of a pure toolbox again and more of a targeted payoff package? I feel like I'm missing something here.
so it is targeted payoff because Golems is like once per turn. No, the synchro.
Synchro. Ah,
So the way you make it, right? So like all the you need to get to two X Sabers and you need to get to two Voltron. And essentially you can Voltron's not once per turn to reborn, so you can just Voltron loop, and essentially like win the game that way. And then you can use Regigura if some people played it, to like add back your Voltron, so you can summon it back again, and and then essentially you put their hand at zero cards.
I got you. I
Um,
got you.
and then Hunley also punished the back row decks, right? So that's why there's a bunch of trap stuns and Trinate Cold Wave was so that like your plays could go through, but also pop three trap cards, which is insane in this format.
That's so brutal because like everything you just said so far is like now like the payoff isn't just tempo or damage, it's just making sure your opponent literally can't play the next turn.
Like they don't have resources, right? So like it became this like slow roll game of like, hey, I'm gonna like gather all my resources and make one big push, and you don't have anything to come back. And then that's like a big thing, right? Like you had Gundam's E-Call too, which is like it's unsearchable, but like this is like the one of the best cards in the format because it also punished people in the mirror match because you can summon their guys from grave.
Okay, so with
Um,
all these new X Saber cards, would you say like this is one of the like first decks where the win condition is basically denying your opponent a future like turn rather than just dealing lethal?
yeah, like it goes back to like check. It goes back to the idea of checkmating, right? Like you put them on no resources or like for sure checkmate, they can't out anything. Um, And that if you look at the side deck, right? There's like Thunder Kings, Doom Caliber Knights, Cyber Dragon. So like you can switch this deck's playstyle into more of like a stun deck when you go first. So you can just deny like a bunch of stuff, and then Chain Disappearance was like for the mirror match too, because like you can like banish their Dark Souls and like it's GG.
Testing.
Yeah. So obviously like Tinkers are your utility piece, but when you're playing more of like the X Saber cards, the game plan is literally like take away everything.
And then
Um,
is this like the point where side decking starts to matter almost as much as main decking because like top decks can now pivot their identity post side based on like what we looked at with the Rock deck?
Yeah, so like another thing is like a lot of people just started playing like good stuff extra deck cards or side deck cards per se. So Doom Caliber Knight was like it got reprinted like into '09, so it was more relatively accessible to everybody. But it was like a generic side deck card that you can play into like a bunch of different rogue decks, and it was good. Thunder King was like the it was last format's premise where like that even people main decked it for the X Saber Mirror and like Infernity, but like as the games were slower, right, Thunder King gets worse. So you can think like Thunder King is really good in fast-paced metas.
Okay, so I want to poke a little bit there. So like with side decking getting stronger here, did that make the format mastery like less about like raw combo execution and more about planning your post side, or like it also is like where you keep the core payoffs and like you try to fill the rest of the board with good stuff and options for specific matchups. Like I'm very curious on like the philosophy that changed over like the FTK meta to now.
Okay, so DRAM actually reminds, like, I like to call it the second wave of Edison, where like you take away all like the fast decks, quote unquote, and then you put it back the old decks, right? So all these, like, it's basically like jungle format all over again. And this is where again your experience in Yu-Gi-Oh matters, where um your side deck knowledge and your matchups become like the side choices that you make become more relevant and to be more widespread, right? And then your positions too, right? So like DD Crow, I would think it is matchup dependent, but I would side it going second a lot. Same with Cyber Dragon. Um, Consecrated Light was a weird one of, but you played it because of Blackwing and Vayu, right? Because that deck still exists randomly. Um, People who were playing like No Limit Crossout, people were still setting cards, right? So you can just set it generically if like you kind of see how their strategy was playing. Um, and like it just became more of like utility rather than like and the good stuff rather than like I had this targeted deck per se. Like you have to make your side deck a lot more like diverse.
Okay, so I have another two-parter for you then. So, like, would you say like generic cards got stronger because the format slowed down enough that like broad answers were actually live in more matchups? And like, is this around the point where players started side decking less for one deck and more for like a whole category of decks and play patterns?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like again, it goes back to what we said. It's like an Edison format, right? So there's more decks in the format that came back in because of a ban list. And like the ceiling of all like the good decks or the newer decks got lowered. You do have to prep for like more matchups per se, and like and siding patterns become a lot more like prevalent in that regard.
Cool. Cool, cool. Do you want to move on to the next
Um,
one?
so so the next side is Star Trek Blast. Um, so notably, right? A lot of people call this the Gatekeeper format because what is it? The structure that came out, and what is it? Fraser Smith wins with it, right? But in actuality, I personally think this is plant format because in this format you got introduced into the most important tuner that to exist in a very long time, which is Formula Synchron.
Formula Synchron. I thought you were going to talk
Yeah,
about Global.
it's both, but like more so Formula Synchron, right? So this card it lets you draw a card, right? And then quick effect synchro, right? Do you not do? What does this remind you of?
It reminds me of why I don't play Synchro decks.
Yeah, or like in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Like this is like the epitome of IP Masquerena.
Kind of, because I remember like people using Formula to like pop artifact cards at one point. Am I remembering that correctly?
I think it was like maybe I don't like you could there's some odd thing you can do, but essentially what this is so this was the first time we saw like the idea of like a quick effect to resolve, right? So anything on res and like stuff like that, like people were like I wouldn't say soft cheating, but like because people didn't know such things, like the pros took advantage of this to make it this card gave you a huge edge against everybody. If you can make the card first. It was also just another tuner that you can like link up to. So like it makes like certain levels that you could make like that were not attainable now. So like um an example is Shooting Star say was it Shooting Star Dragon or whatever it's called? Level 10. That card's also really custom because like excavate tuners attack and then like you can summon back Stardust Dragon or whatever. It's like super good. Um,
See a negate effect here.
yeah, negate. Like, see, that's like a, it's like a omni, like not an omni because it comes back, but like it is it's really ridiculous, right? Um, and it is basically power creep Stardust Dragon. So basically, if you can get to Stardust Dragon plus formula, you make this for free, and the payoff is really good. Um, and now I can talk about like the main deck now, right? So this is Robert Briagin's deck, and he made top 16, and a lot of it goes back to the plant deck, right, from Edison. It's this quick draw. So basically, they cut quick draw entirely because the card was bricks, and they wanted to play more utility pieces now. So Debris Dragon became now like the premier tuner of choice. Glow Bulb is also legal. Spore is also legal. So now you have Lone Fire Blossom as a way to tutor out two strong tuners to make really big plays. Um, and there's Raikos, obviously. There's no Charge Light Brigade because you have Hamster. But there's your books, and I think that's gonna be like a really big theme moving forward as you'll see, Book of Moon is like this like era's dimensional barrier.
Okay, I'm not understanding the reference. Plain.
So the synchros was like the only big mechanic, right? So essentially, if you're able to book through tuner, that means that like they need to have another way to find a tuner to synchro, right? So essentially, if they don't have, which the ceiling of these formats are way lower. So imagine being able to like normal summon the Breed Dragon, they summon Dandy, right? And then before they synchro, you book it, and now like they can't make black girls to blow up your board.
Gotcha. Okay, no, that
Yeah,
makes a lot more sense then.
yeah. So it is a defensive card, but it's like an actual potential turn skip. Another big thing was like you'll see Robbie. And this is for all the players. There was like two premises to play. It's either you played Decree or you played trap cards, right? Um, I think Robbie took the approach of Decree, which makes sense because he's playing 3 book, and then the whole point is like Plant had a hard time going into trap cards because those your cards don't resolve. So, and when if you able to like play against an anti meta like Blackwing or GB where they set a bajillion trap cards and you flip it, and now that they need to have specifically Book of Moon to stop you, right? Otherwise, you're just trading resources with Black Rose. Also, Black Rose went to I think 3 this format.
Gotcha. So like with Robbie's philosophy here, then Book of Moon was basically just universal answer because stopping the tuner stopped the whole turn, pretty much.
Yeah, it became the best neg one in Yu-Gi-Oh. It aged really well essentially. Like you can even say like it aged really well into Kashtira, but like that's a whole different premise. But this was like this iteration of like the dimensional barrier, which is really good. Um, so another thing that you'll notice that like um there's 3 poly duality and 2 effect failure. I think at this point like effect failure started seeing more traction as it stops the Breed Dragon, it stops like a lot of different like it stops Caius, like it stops like a lot of different things. So people decided to play because it was searchable. And then I think Robbie decided to play 3 poly duality because he's trying to play the slow game. Because he knows that like if he can outgrind his opponents like over the course of like a bajillion turns, like he's gonna be fine. And his deck is a control deck, so like for the most part. So you don't have to like synchro summon every turn per se.
Okay, so like
Um,
with three duality here, then does that tell us like this format valued seeing the right starter or answer more than just maximizing the ceiling?
yeah, so I think it's like sculpting your hand to make it the best as possible for like to start because you didn't have a lot of starters back then. So it would be starter cards in this deck would be like Lone Fire Blossom or like Raiko, Card Trooper Dandelion, stuff like that, or Hamster too. Even though those in essence like those are a lot of starters, they just help you start playing. They don't actually truly advance your game state per se. So, and until like you accumulate a bunch of pieces, so like you can like depending on like how do your turns are, duality sculpts your hand so that you can set up for the next couple turns.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. I think
um
we're on deck number 8 now, right?
yeah. Oh, another before this, another
Yes.
big
Okay.
card that comes up in this format that changed Yu-Gi-Oh was Scrap Dragon. This is the second biggest utility piece that changed Yu-Gi-Oh again. um um The reason is because so Dandelion, right? Imagine being able to pop your own tokens to pop their cards.
Well, that's pretty funny.
That and it's a dragon, right? So it's the breed dragonable. So it's like this really big utility piece that like it's so strong that like and it's 28. That like people like this is probably a two of in some people's deck. Um, but anywho, we'll go to the next deck because this is one of my favorite stories to tell.
Oh boy, here we go.
Um, Um, so this set in particular is Storm of Ragnarok, right? And long story short, this is the set that Maxi gets released in.
I don't
Um,
see a Maxi in the list.
See, that's the crazy part, right? Oh my god. Um, so this deck in particular was piloted by my friend Arnold Alvarado. He made top 4 at this event. And essentially this changed Synchro Summoning forever. The release of Legendary Six Samurais Shien changed the way Yu-Gi-Oh is paced for the rest of time. Because that card is a spell and chat negate that stays on the board for free.
Yeah.
right? Yikes, right? So imagine you're playing the trap deck, right? Or like a control deck, and now you have to deal with the 2500 body that negates the your spell and trap you're trying to resolve now. So you need to have counter traps now to break the chain as we learned in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Funny enough, we don't have a lot of those. So that's why there's like 3 warning judgment to deny a Shein from resolving. Magatama is also there to protect your board if you have a samurai monster, right? So essentially, the other thing what made this deck broken was Gateway of the Six. So for anyone who knows what that card does, this is the custom card for Six Samurai, and then so basically you remove 4 Bushido counters to add a Six Samurai, right? And that's not once per turn. So imagine being able to resource loop, um, the Synchro Summon all the time, and add back monsters for free. And
Yeah, I'm
then
not I'm
you
not the
had
hugest fan of Six Sam. Like when I first started playing the game, this was like a huge pain in my side.
yeah, I this is like it was everyone's nightmare, right? So another thing was Six Samurai United was a way to draw the Smoke Sneaker was a Rhoda, so you had like 4 Rhodas in the deck. You had was it the double sword technique, whatever that card is. That card's basically got his e-call for the samurai deck. Um, and then there's Book of Moon, right? Like that's what we said before. Book the tuner, you're good, right?
I hope so.
So yeah, I hope yes, yeah, I hope so. Like that's the big word there, right? So another big thing that I noticed about this deck, and I looked at other people's deck because we knew about this moving forward in hindsight now was there's no Maxi in this deck, right? So you would think that like Maxi's really good against this deck because you're drawing a bajillion cards you can out the board, right? But um there was a hand loop that you could do in the samurai deck that reverse engineered if they got Maxi'd. And that was with you could look this up right now. You can look at Legendary Six Samurai, look up the blue and red cards real quick.
Wow. Man, I'm dreading this. I hate Six Sam for the hand loop specifically. What is it? Do I just put Six Sam in the
Yeah,
search?
Six Samurai. So there's this red guy right here, on the bottom left. Bottom left.
Bottom left.
So you have Mizuho, and then go to the next page. No, actually no, it's right there on the bottom right. The Shinai. So these 2 cards got released in this set as well, and essentially it's like this is like a loop you could do with the gateway. So like you could pop cards on your field, and then this card says add back a Six Samurai, right? So essentially you play 2 red and 1 blue, and you can enable this loop to not only break your opponent's board going second, but in the event you got max seed, you could make them deck out.
That's disgusting.
So
So
that's
even
why
back
like, I
then.
think even back then, like they were like if people had countermeasures to this, right? If you played the samurai deck, and this is like a big reason why you played it. Um, my friend Arnold did not decide to play it because I don't think he knew about it. But if he did knew about it, right? He knew that like if I played red and blue, like like I could hand loop my opponents if this had happened. But he decided not to play it. So this is Billy. I know Billy Brigg played this, so like that's why he got top. He made he top, but he didn't win the event. Some things I want to now mention as we are now entering another T0 territory, right? Because this is probably for this event. If you weren't playing this deck, you were not winning. Even though there was like Chaos Plant, you had X Saber, you had like all these other decks. Um, Six Samurai in particular was like the best deck. So if you look at this guy's side deck, there's 3 Puppet Plant and 2 Kinetic Soldier for the mirror match specifically. So imagine like you could Puppet Plant your opponent Qian,
Well, that's funny.
and then DV number
Oh no.
one.
No! We were doing so
No,
well. We were doing so well.
no.
Hold on, hold on.
Um,
I'm gonna pause the recording here. I'll try to fix this and we'll come.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry about the technical difficulties. We're back. DB had a moment, so
Yeah. So
very short moment. I thought it was gonna
yeah,
be way worse, but
yeah.
thankfully, slight hiccup.
Yeah, but so there's 3 Puppet Plant, 2 Kinetic Soldier, right? These sided cards were for the mirror match because like the mirror like people just had 5 monsters on the board, so you need like a random wall that you can search off Rhoda to like win. Another big thing was like people played board wipes, right? Like Dark Hole and stuff. And if they bait out your negate, it's cool. But like you need if they have Darkhold, like you lose, right? So or Black Rose. So you need a Starlight Road to protect your board. There's another insurance policy. Um, Also, another big thing. This is like another thing about Edison I like. And this is now hindsight. Compulse is like low-key one of the best cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! At some point because it's the best 2-for-1, like Book of Moon.
Yeah, no, I
Um,
see that because like if someone synchro summons just compulse and then they lost the two bodies and then they lost the synchro, like I see it.
there's so much value, yeah. So Arnold was like very he knew about that because of our friends, I think. Also note this is really random. When I was looking up deck lists, there's only 14 extra deck cards. I don't know if this was intentional or not, but like if it was, then like you were playing Samurai. But the other thing was like there's nothing else you needed to play. You just make Sheen all the time and that's it. Um, I think the Cheery Beast was also legal too, but like I think that's probably the card you're missing. But I don't think you needed that card yet. But because you wanted to play Samurai cards. But
Yeah, definitely.
oh yeah, Maxi was released this set, and like this that also card changed the format forever because like everyone has to play slower paced Yu-Gi-Oh. And I think the next deck, so this is going to our national season, right? With Extreme Power Force,
Ah, there's the
and then,
next
but
one.
this is the but this is the next. This is like the end. This is YCS Indie, which is the end of the format.
Oh, Tengu?
Essentially, this is the start, the first iteration of Tengu. So Tengu Plant originally started in Extreme Power Force, but this event Indie, which is a YCS, this is the first legal like iteration of Exceeds. So there's Utopia and Grainosaurus in this slot here, right? Because there's Tour Guide, right? And there's Tengu. So um so synchros, I wouldn't say they were still the big star of this deck, but you're seeing that like it became more of like a mid range type good stuff dot deck, right? So obviously there's two formula. There's a Scrap Dragon. I think Robbie figured out the if you open like was it Debris Dandy 1-for-1, it's like draw five.
Gross. What?
There's a draw five combo. Yeah. So essentially like it's you make Librarian and then you make Formula and then you make Stardust after that. That's like draw five. So
Yeah,
that's
no,
really
that
disgusting.
yeah,
That's
that's
really
I
disgusting.
can't imagine drawing 5 cards in 2011. Jesus.
But that was like an extremely exclusive combo that they found out, and then Robbie did this in a feature match, so that was like really cool. Um, so what Robbie wins his YCS with this deck list. But more importantly, like okay, so everyone knew like Samurai got hit and all these like new decks come in, right? So Robbie was already ahead of the future by playing hand in his deck, which is why there's two Max C2 Baylor. I think if I had to play the deck again, I'd probably play three Max C3 Baylor just because like you're gonna there was a bunch of plant and you needed these cards to give yourself an edge in the mirror because Tengu was just power creep Yu-Gi-Oh. Just another thing I want to mention too. So like we didn't have. I think malicious was at two at this point in time. So to have a level four malicious type card that was somewhat accessible, even if you didn't draw it, was like so crazy because that card floats and did everything for you. This is which is why another thing like Pot of Avarice was in the format too because like it put back your Tengus in your tour guides. Um, Another thing was like um so you're seeing how like a lot of these like old plant decks had like decree, right? But I think Robbie decided to go back to trap cards because like trap cards were just a lot more like they enabled your push. Another big thing was so
What is
Trapstun
this?
was like oh no reverse, it's Monster Reborn. It's a call harness for like level for tiny monsters. But like you could summon back like Dandelion, Spore, Glow Fire, whatever, right? So the cards like some people play two. I think Robbie only just decided to play one because they didn't want it dead. Um, Another thing was I think in this format, Pokemon was at one.
Ah, so it finally got punished.
They finally yeah. So people realize that like that card's dimensional barrier. So like all right, we need to put this on one. This card's too powerful. So instead, he's decided to play enemy controller because a lot of people what they do is like people had Tengus on their board, right? So they would like um you summon your Tengu and econ your Tengu to summon steal their Tengu, summon your Tengu from deck, make Utopia.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, and then the other thing I want to mention too, because like this is the first event with exceeds, right? So if you detach a material off an exceed, it gets its effect.
Okay, so you detach off Utopia effect and then Tengu
Well,
resolves?
not Tengu, specifically Sangan.
Oh, Sangan, right.
So they say for example, you Torgan Sangan a Greenosaurus attack, damage step, detach to burn, right? And then you Sangan search. That was the ruling for this event.
Oh, hell no.
Yeah, like I think Dandelion was the same thing too. So it's like you there was like a bunch of like shenanigans that like this like exceeds had to be around for that reason. Um so um so again, so Todd, you mentioned like how people decided to make their side decks, right? So what Robbie did was I think extremely not revolutionary, but like he had a plan, right? So again he transformation sides into stun. So what he does is he takes all the plant stuff and he sides into like anti-meta, which is why there's like two Thunder King, two Banisher, two Fossil Dyna, like Deepers and stuff like that. And he just played like a very slow roll control game with Tengus and like tour guides and breakers and stuff like that.
Yeah, so even here then, like the best decks still weren't just powerful, they were just built to punish whatever people thought the correct side deck plan was.
Yes. Like another thing was really cool about his deck was he made like seven tools and he sided like Forbidden Lands. And I think he's because like he didn't like the idea of blind MST. As like that became like a very bad thing moving to do, but like when people are like flipping up their back row, you can like for sure one for one with and negate the thing. So or push your plays through, right? So that was like a big um logic and technical play that he saw with like when you making plays with Black Rose or like Scrapjack and Trishula, like he didn't want that punished at all.
So like since this is the first event with Xyz being legal, does like Synchro slowly start to lose its place as like the main mechanic, or does it stay dominant for a little while?
Right. So I think from this point moving forward, Photon was it? I think either Generation Force or Photon Shockwave was like the first big set of exceeds. So the mechanic will change.
Oh, you all that sounds like a future video for us.
But I do want to talk about the last thing, Cool Tune.
Oh, here we are, the modern day.
So so what we know from tuners, right? So like everyone had to like play like a bunch of like these extenders or like ways to get to a tuner. Like if you had to like we're down bad back then, right? Because especially when they were limited. But now that you're looking at a deck like Cool Tune, right? I look at Rotary, right? I look at Global. Like that should not be a thing. Like look at your opponent's hand and search, and it's a level one, and it's searchable. That's crazy. And then look, no, and then Q, right? Q, that card is tour guide.
That's cute. Oh, it's the person.
That Q is tour guide. That card's or Debris Dragon. That card's crazy. And they're all tuners. And hey, look, Effect Villa makes an appearance again.
Of course.
Like it is so crazy that you don't need to have two bodies anymore to sync. You only have one body and tuners in hand, and half the deck is tuners. Like, and you didn't like. I think now like modern day cards like Call by the Grave, Forbidden Talents, Prosperity are like really like strong one-ups to play to increase your ceiling rate to make your cards resolve. Um, and you like Solemn Accusation is like the power level of Solemn Warning this format, but like it is probably better because it protects you from like the breaker strategies. Judgment still sees play to this day. Um, like Lightning Illusion Gate is basically New Age Darkhold,
Oh
right?
yeah, this
Like
Illusion Gate card is so ridiculous.
that
I
card is
love this card.
crazy. That card is crazy. And then like was it Zaylin? That card's basically Sheehan on some steroids, bro. Like like yeah, Zaylin. That card is basically Shuin Sheehan. Um, and to me, like when I look at all these decks now, right? Like we went from like an OTK centric type of game to like a very mid range control utility game, which we are now with Cold Tune, kind of. But like Cold Tune does that on like an extreme level because like it literally puts up checkmate. kind of like the X Saber deck.
Well, yeah, I mean, like Pultoon like rips a card from your action deck, looks at your hand. Like, what doesn't this deck do at this point?
Yeah, like it does what basically the X Saber deck does, but like it for sure checkmates you instead of like having to deny, hope your push doesn't get denied or whatever. But one monster is like so crazy. Like that's why like people struggle against this deck because like you can book this deck, but like this deck has four pushes. Like you have your rotary normal summon, your regular normal summon, you have KTS, you have your the Duelist Genesis and Synchro Overtake, and then you have Colton Synchro to Synchro. There's so many ways to play with this deck
I'm
that it
glad I
is
play
it's
OCG now because I still have access to the barrier.
yeah. So like it is one of those things where like I look at Synchro Summoning where it is now, and I'm like, yo, like I look at all these times when I played as a kid. I'm like, yo, Synchros are crazy. And then, but I actually think exceeds are crazier. But that's a whole different discussion of in the next episode.
Do you want to wrap this one up then? Are we done here?
Sure. Like, so what takeaways can we take from this?
My takeaway is Synchro's the best mechanic. Just kidding. I think Fusion's the best mechanic. But again, that sounds like another future episode. This has been a really great, fun learning experience for me. And I want to give a huge shout out to YouTube and Format Library. We would not be able to make this kind of content for you guys without those two resources. And Daniel doing all the research and work to get us to this point. So, Daniel, do you have any shout outs? Any other tidbits you want to share before we wrap up?
Um, yeah. Shout out to all the OGs: Dale, Lazaro, Jeff, what is it? Patrick Hogan, Robbie, all these people who were like instrumental to people's success today. You could look. Some of these deck lists were shown when people were in the shadows, or all that information is like super lost. So be able to recover some of those like deck lists, are very you know it is we're really fortunate to have them because some of these are getting lost on YouTube. Um, and shout out you, of course, Taj, for taking some time out of your day to do
Ah,
something like this.
stop
Like,
it.
yeah, dude, like this is a fun series. We're gonna do a lot more episodes.
Oh yeah, yeah. Definitely stay tuned, everyone. If you've made it this far to the end of the video, like, comment, subscribe. I know I hate doing it, but you know what? It's kind of fun to say now. We're definitely going to be talking about more of this like historical view of like the different summoning mechanics. We're going to try to think of other videos, and more importantly, we're doing this because what Daniel just mentioned, lost media. We want to make sure like the history is preserved and like people have a resource and a reference to come back and look at these things and try to learn about the history of the game. Yu-Gi-Oh has been around for almost 30 years. Quarter century was a crazy, crazy thing we experienced over the last few years. So like we're looking forward to seeing what the 30th has for us in the near future, and we just want to make this series of videos just just so we can have a historical record and something you can have on your commute to work, or like if you're curious or if you wanted to learn, if you're new to the game. This is what it's all about for us. Thank you guys for tuning in and sticking out for us. And yeah, of course, like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, and actually comment which mechanic you want to see next. Whether that be Seize, Fusion, Link, Pendulum, whatever. Let us know in the comment section down below. And thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you in the next video, whenever that may be.